Good evening. Welcome all. It's good to be back after, quite a long break. We had all Wednesdays for the past 4 being either Yontiv or Matzah Yontiv or Erev Yontiv. So it's great to be back and good to see all the familiar faces. I see some newcomers in the names on the participants as well. We come out of the month of Tishrei on a high. It's a spiritual injection, and we kind of ready to fly for the year. And when we start the new cycle of Torah readings after Simchas Torah, and it seems to be quite a downer. Breshit begins with creation. It begins with amazing things, but then things start going south very, very quickly from the very beginning. And by the end of the portion, God, sorry, he's made the world and is ready to destroy it. Plan which gets into action in this week's parasha, Noach, when in fact there is a flood, total destruction of civilization. It's only at the very end of the parasha that a glimmer of hope appears with the birth of Abram that's recorded there. You have to wait until Lech Lecha, which is only next Shabbos, to kind of end up with a story that makes us happy from beginning to end. But we've got to suffer through a lot of the birth pangs of humanity, the birth pangs of Genesis, of creation. Our parasha is awful. Destruction of civilization once, when everyone but a few perish, and then we're given a second chance, and Tower of Babel is again a downfall of civilization. I gave a more extensive share on this last week, but it was a very technologically advanced society that used technology for the wrong reasons, that wanted to be in love with their own power, their own technology, and so forth. And the result of that was a breakdown. In fact, I think there've been so many, short clips and writings, little essays about the technology and Facebook, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, all crashing in the week of the portion of Noach. So be it. Terrible things are said in the Torah about man, and about his inherent evil tendencies, to the extent that you wonder if man even stands a chance. I recall last year I had some car trouble, and while it was being repaired, believe it or not, a wild dog ran across in the middle of the highway, and it took a few weeks for the car to be repaired. And while I was picking up a rental from one of the major rental companies, which is an insurance company, they gave me a ride at the counter one evening, and they said to me, "Sorry, all we have is a quid." I'd never driven a Quid before. It's a very little Renault, for those of you who don't know that it's got very modern features, but it's a tiny little car. And she says, nobody likes to drive Quids, but that's all we've got tonight. You're welcome to come back and change it, or you can go to the Rosebank branch and change it if you want. Well, let me tell you, I had no way, even though I was supposed to keep this car for a month while my car was being repaired, there was no chance I was going to be happy driving the car once it was dissed in that way before me. Follow me as I take you into the text. At the end of, here we are, at the end of Bereshit, end of last week's parasha. It looks terrible. Lord saw how great was man's wickedness on earth. Hashem regretted he had made man on earth. In verse 7, I regret I made him. And look here, verse 5, how every plan devised by his mind, that's man, is nothing but evil all the time. That's not very, very, very promising. If we look after the flood at this selection here, and that is, if it comes up on the screen, that's great. There we are. Just after the flood. when Noach makes an altar and brings offerings of every clean animal. And then it says, Hashem smelt the pleasing odor. It says, never again will I doom the earth because of man, since the devising of man's mind are evil from his youth. Again, Yetzer Ra Lev Adam Ra Min Urav. And that is kind of very, very scary. So I want to share with you a text that we're going to study together. It's a Medrash Tanchuma. It took me a while to get into it. I mean, the subject is the interplay between oral law and written law. But I had to stop for a moment because I found that Medrash fascinating in its own right and think, why does Medrash Tanchuma talk in the portion of Noach, of all places, about the Torah and its value? Here's the beginning of this Medrash, and we're actually going to get right into it together and study some text because there's some fascinating insights into oral versus written law. Here, Ele Toldot Noach, the generations of Noach, says the Medrash, blessed be the name of the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed is he, who chose Israel from among the 70 nations of the world, as it is written, for the portion of the Lord is his people Jacob, a lot of his inheritance. And he gave us the written law, he gave us the Torah, and he also gave us the oral law. That is the 5 books of Moses. Well, written law is more than just the 5 books of Moses. The entire Tanakh is called the written law. And he has also given us the oral law as codified in the Mishnah and subsequently in the Gemara and in subsequent texts. Now, what is this doing at the beginning of the portion of Noach and Medrash, the third Medrash on the parasha? And I had to scratch around a little bit to understand the relevance, but there it is. As the world is going perverse, as things are completely going wrong, as we find out about civilizations that are being destroyed, he is one man that is going to rebuild humanity. He's going to rebuild civilization. He's going to have a son who's going to be called Shem, or he has a son who is Shem, from which will stem the Jewish nation. And Ele Toldot Noach, these are the descendants of Noach. It's all for the purpose of those who are going to receive Torah, practice Torah, and preach Torah and spread Torah in the world as it is going to be rebuilt. So as we're reading about the degeneration, we're reading about the potential within man to actually act bad, that he's got this Yetzer with which he is created. At the same time, we also learn about Torah, about a light that is going to be given to this world, which is going to be spread through some of Noach's descendants and eventually teachings that are going to spread to the entire world. And as you can see, the Medrash Tanchuma makes the point that it's going to be given in 2 channels, a written text and an oral text. It's important to understand the interplay between these two, because we all often think of, the text of the Torah as something which was given from Mount Sinai, and then an oral law, which seems to be an interpretation thereof, which the rabbis have spent the past 3,500 years developing. And for that reason, we attach more importance to the text, to the written text, than we do to the interpretation thereof. And the Tanchuma really gives us a glimpse right in its opening to say, no, both of these were given by God. Now, this is a problem that is going to be recurring throughout, all of time. It's going to be a problem that's going to happen over and over, in that there are going to be people who are going to want to accept the written law and reject the written law. It begins with the Karaites and the Sadducees and the Basutim, etc. All groups that accepted the written text, but were not prepared to accept that the oral law was a genuine interpretation thereof. it continued and continued to surface. And as you'll see in the Medrash we're going to read together, it's understandable why people would want to do that. Reading the written text of the Torah is fun, it's short, it's finite, it's limited, and it seems to fairly easy to practice Judaism just based on the written text. It's when you get to the oral law that you get the sense that the rabbis, really wanted to play a trick on this. But of course, there's nothing further from the truth. When the Enlightenment movement began, which was the birth of reform, once again, there was this rejection of the oral law in favor of the text of the written law. In fact, one of the reasons why in traditional Orthodox circles, there is not enough attention paid to the study of Tanakh. And there is more, textual study in the Talmud, is because that was what the Enlightenment brought in and tried to bring this movement into the yeshivot of shun the oral law, let's stick with the text. And so we went overboard and we kind of didn't really shun the Tanakh because it remained holy, but less effort, less time was put into actually studying it in as much depth and attention. If we go back to our texts, Rambam in his introduction explains to us this interplay. Where will I find Rambam? As soon as this moves away from there we are. Rambam in his introduction talks about the transmission of the Torah. And he says the following, it begins here. All the commandments which were given to Moses on Sinai were given together with their oral explanation. So when Moshe was with Hashem on Mount Sinai, God gave him the text, the written law, and at the same time, he gave them the explanation. I'll give you one example. In the written text, it said, you shall put the portions of the tefillin as frontlet on signs between your eyes. Where's between your eyes? As far as I know, between your eyes, that's here. In fact, the Karaites, they wore their tefillin right here, Tzedukim. They wore their tefillin right here, because that's what the text says. The interpretation there obviously it's in line with between your eyes, but it's got to be worn, here, kind of bad example here, but at the bottom of your hairline is where the tefillin should sit, right over here. That was taught by Hashem to Moshe on Mount Sinai. At the same time that he gave him the text, he also gave him, and Rambam says the Torah is the Holy Writ, and the commandments is the oral expression, as in the verse above, Exodus 24. I will give you the tablets of stone, the Torah and the commandment. Tablets of stone, of course, I said that only. The Torah, that's the written text. The commandment, that is a reference to the oral law. So here we have it in the Hebrew, Luchat ha'even, ha-Torah, ve'ha-mitzvah. Torah is Torah shebichtav, written law. Mitzvah is perusha, that's the oral law. And we're told that we have to observe the Torah by the word of his commandments, the commandment which is called the oral Torah. The Medrash tells us that Moshe spent 40 days and 40 nights, 40 days during which he studied the written text, and 40 nights, says the Medrash, during which he studied the interpretation of what we call the oral law. The Torah was written, if we look on, by Moshe before he died. He gave a book to each tribe. The oral law remained an oral tradition and was not reduced to writing until a much later time, which Rambam goes through the timeline and through the reason why this is actually the case. So let's go back to our Medrash Tanchuma, which is what we want to see right over here. So as I said, we were reading earlier, he gave us the written law, which is the 5 books of Moses, which contain hidden and obscure teachings, which are then explained in the oral law, which is codified in the Mishnah. The Medrash, just to give you a timeline, I think it's this 4th century Medrash Tanchuma, as opposed to Maimonides, which was written about 600-700 years later. The written law enunciates only the general principles of the law. The oral law discusses the specifics of the law. The written law is brief and the oral law is lengthy. And the Medrash quotes a verse, Aruka me'eretz midah urchava min yam. That was not a good idea. I get rid of this. Okay. Here we are. Broader than the land, and longer than the earth, and broader than the sea. Here's another interesting concept, says the Midrash. Oral law is not found in the land of the living. What does this mean? Is it then in the land of the dead? How can this be? I mean, oral law is read, studied by us very much into this world. So the Medrash explains that this means that the oral law is found among those who pursue, not found among those who pursue the pleasures of the world, its passions, glory, greatness. You have to deprive yourself for the sake of the oral law, as in Pirkei Avot says, you have to study Torah in the way of eating a morsel of bread, a measure of water, and so forth, a life of hardship. So oral law is hard. Written law is easy. Oral law is hard. And he ends by quoting a book from, a verse from Shmot, Al pi hadvarim ha'ele, karati itchabrit. According to those words, I made a covenant with you. Now look at this, Al pi, that word pi, which in English means according to, but there's also the word mouth. And so he says, our sages point out that he didn't use the words for the sake of those words, which would be leman, or because of these, which would be biglal, but on account of these words, with the words according to the tenor al pi. Al pi alludes to the Torah sheba al peh, or the oral law, difficult to learn, and we carry on. Anyway, let's move on. Here, Medrash Tanchumi is going to solve for us an old question, an age-old question. There are two conflicting midrashim about the Jews' willingness to receive the Torah. On the one hand, we read this in the Torah itself. Moshe presents the Torah to the Jewish people. He says, would you like to receive the Torah? And the answer is immediately, Na'aseh v'nishma, we're going to accept it. Even before they told the details of the mitzvot of the Torah, the Jews accept it willingly. There seems to be no reluctance, no need to push them. They're very excited about it. That's the one account based on the Jews saying Then there's a midrash also quoted in the same Gemara, it's the Gemara in Shabbat, that says no. Before the Jews accepted the Torah, God took Mount Sinai, lifted it over their heads, and held it as a threat. And he said, look, either you guys accept the Torah, or if you refuse to accept the Torah, then I'm going to drop the mountain, and this will be your burial place. So which is it? Did the Jews accept the Torah willingly, jumping at it with the famous words, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, then we'll listen, or did they have to be coerced into doing it? Medrash Tanchuma says, depends which Torah we're talking about. And with that, he resolves this seeming contradiction between Midrashim. He says, the Israelites didn't accept the Torah until the Holy One, blessed is He, arched the mountain over them, as it says, like a vessel, as it says, they stood beneath the mountain. And Rav Dina son of Chama said, he told the Jews, if you accept the Torah, well and good, if not, your grave will be here. But if you should say that he arched the mountain over them because of the written law, isn't it true that as soon as he said that we accept Torah, they all responded, we'll do and we'll hear? Because the written Torah was brief and required no striving and suffering. Rather, he threatened them because of the oral law. After all, it contains the detailed explanations of the commandments. Simple and difficult, it's difficult. It's not easy. It almost seems like we're being, discouraged from studying the oral law. But as we'll see further in Tanchum, he develops the idea that the survival of the world very much depends on it. Anyway, let's go on a little bit further. Eventually, he comes to telling us that the reward for studying the oral law is considerable, and its reward is in the hereafter. As it is said, the people that walk in darkness have seen a great light. So the darkness is a reference to the hardship, and the great light, that's the reward. But where is it going to be? He suggests it's not necessarily going to be in this world or in the here and now. And he refers to a famous medrash, because in the beginning of Breshit, it talks about God having created the light. It says, Vayar Elokim et haor kitov. God saw the light and it was good. Rashi comments, based on the Gemara, Rashi saw that light, which was created on the first day of creation, first day of the week of Breshit, was too good for the world. There was another light later, natural light of the sun, of the moon, etc. That came into being later. Artificial light came into being later. But that initial light, it says, was too good for it to be revealed to the world at that point. The world was not ready for it. He hid it for the righteous in the world to come. So the righteous go to heaven and they benefit from it. And we told when Mashiach comes and this world is elevated, that light will shine into the world as it is. Where did he hide it? So the Gemara says he hid it in the Torah. Says Medrash Tanchuma, which part of Torah did God hide it in? Well, the answer is obvious. The great light alludes to the light that was created on the first day of creation, and reserved for those who devote themselves to the study of the oral law day and night. As a consequence of their merit, the world endures. As it is said, my covenant will not be with day and night. What covenant is day and night? The covenant of the oral law. The Holy One blesses him, made a covenant with the Israelites, that neither they nor the descendants unto the last generation would forget the oral law. These are words that for those of you who daven every day and recite the prayer of Alatzion will be familiar with it. V'anizot briti otam Hashem, ruch yasher alecha, dvari asher samti beficha, lo yamushu. Here we are. And as far as me, this covenant with them, said Hashem, my spirit is upon you, my words that I've put into your mouth shall not depart out of your mouth, neither out of the mouth of your seed forever. It doesn't say shall not depart from you, it says out of your mouth. It says Medrash Tanchuma, we're talking about Torah Sheba'al Peh. And he then moves on to a bit of a historical development. Of course, Tanchuma was written, as I said, 4th century Common Era, but that history is going to repeat itself. And that is the establishment of academies of studying of oral law, yeshivot. Talks about the 2 yeshivot, shtei yeshivot, 2 yeshivot, because at that time there were 2 huge academies. There were Surah and Pumpadita. And this is where the Jews study Torah day and night. They assembled from all over the world, twice a year in the months of Adar and Elul. But the entire year there was a yeshiva existing. And there they battle, he uses the words, a problem encountered in Torah, and they resolve them and reach definitive decisions, studying Torah, Mishnah, Talmud, so that we may know the law properly. These yeshivot did not experience captivity, persecution, or purge. The yeshiva won. Greece or Rome could not conquer them. They survived. And then it goes into a bit of a historical cycle that we're running out of time a bit. But the world of yeshivot has survived. We've seen this cycle over and over and over. He's talking about the Babylonian exile. And what happened there? it says that when 12 years before the destruction of the temple, there was the initial exile into Babylon. And he carried away to Jerusalem the princes and the mighty men of valor, and captives, and craftsmen and smiths. They didn't remain. All that remained in Jerusalem are the poorest. Now, where is any glory? What is the men of valor who are being taken captives into war? He says, no, we're not talking about men of valor as in people who are, powerful soldiers. We're talking about the mighty ones in the knowledge of Torah. And here is the cycle that has happened. As Jews have moved, Torah has almost preceded them. So, before the Churban in Europe, yeshivot were being built in North America, and Torah survived there. And so there's been a cycle where study of the oral law has always been that the yeshivot have always proceeded in that cycle of survival. Those are the real battlegrounds of survival of the Jewish people. And coming back to the text that we were looking at before, when it talks about craftsmen and smiths, or charash, masger, charash is that when one of them spoke, the others were made speechless. But a part of the argument, because that in cheresh in Hebrew is a person who is deaf, who cannot talk, and smiths is that when one of them closed the case, then purity and impurity, no one else in the world was able to reopen that argument. And this is how Medrash Tanchuma explains to us the inseparability of oral and written law, and the great value that there is in the upkeep and the maintenance of the oral law. Let's not diminish its value by saying the written text is divine, the rest is mere interpretation. There is, to be true, a body of laws that are of rabbinic origin. There are laws that were created by the rabbis as a fence around the Torah. Many of the laws of Shabbat, Muktzah, many of the laws of family purity, many aspects of Jewish law are gzerot, or decrees, rabbinic decrees, to prevent us from reaching a Torah violation. Many laws of kashrut on that basis as well. But the oral law as we know it, as in the Talmud, which is a record of a law that was meant to be transmitted verbally, and for practical reasons eventually became a written record, is divine. As I said earlier, was taught by Hashem to Moshe on Mount Sinai, daytime written text, nighttime oral law. In fact, that practice, and I'll end with that, continues, where we tend to dedicate daylight hours to the written text, and we tend to dedicate a nighttime hours to the oral law. For those of you familiar with the practice of not reciting Tehillim after dark, part of that reason is that Tehillim, of course, is from the written text, and that belongs in the daylight hours as opposed to the oral law, Gemara, and so forth, which is studied after dark. With that wonderful medrash, we are rehabilitated as humans. Yes, indeed. Torah exists that is able to drag us to the worst of places. But then God gave the Torah as an antidote to the Yetzer Hara, and with that Torah, written text as well as oral law, we can overcome the Yetzer Hara and reach that supernal light that was there before there was ever any sin in the world. Thank you very much. See you next week.